It's never going to be reduced to one lane in either direction. Functionally, that would not be possible. However, there are elements of what a 4-lane highway in either direction could do that could be worthy of conversation. And that's what the report was trying to do.
Welcome to the VCalla Show, presented by CrossCut Digital Strategies. Hello everyone, and welcome to the VCalla Show, presented by CrossCut Digital Strategies. I'm Vincenzo, Calla, creator of VCalla Productions, and today I'm sitting here with City Councillor Laine Johnson, Councillor for Ward 8, College Ward.
That's the
Laine,
one.
thank you for welcoming me to your office. It's great to see you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Yes, it's been a long time, but I'm really happy to be here. And as I was saying before we started rolling, I'm really glad to have the opportunity to talk, in a long form format about what this report is and what this report isn't, and what people can expect over the coming months and longer term.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about the Robertson Road reimagining sort of vision that your office put out. This has dominated conversations in Bell's Corners, broadly Nepean, and for City Hall watchers across the city who have been interested in, infrastructure and what's going on and how are we sort of building a new version of the city of Ottawa that works for everybody. So I'm glad to have you here today. A lot of people have been asking a lot of questions, and I just want to take this opportunity to get it all out there and talk about what is this going to look like.
Love it.
Thanks to you for agreeing for this, and let's get going.
Sure.
So I want to get your perspective in a moment, but I just want to play it out from the perspective of what people have been seeing and how they have seen this. So there was a plan released by your office earlier this year. You did consultations for a year on Robertson Road, and this is something you've been talking about since you were first elected in 2022. So you put out a plan. It was a very, very comprehensive, dense plan. But people were unhappy because there were certain points where it looked like it was coming down to one lane. So people were upset about that. There are also many parts of the plan, again, about cycling, LRT stage 1 or stage 2, etc., but this stuck out. Then your office saw this. You said, okay, let's get a new version of the report. Let's get more consultation in. You released this new report in May 2026, came out very recently. And we're here to talk about it because I think it's an important conversation. And I want to discuss the plan. I want to discuss the changes. I want to discuss why certain things came out in the way that they did.
Yeah.
And what will it look like going forward. So I really just want to get your perspective. Talk to me about Robertson Road. It's a huge road in your ward. It's a problematic road in your ward, and it's a road that needs to be fixed. So tell me a bit about why you focused on Robertson and why you think this is a focus or priority.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, certainly, as you say, I was elected in 2022. And when I was knocking doors in Bell's Corners, before then, it was an incredible, it was a big consensus, actually. Many people would say, and what are you going to do about Robertson Road? They're saying Bell's Corners has been left out of city plans. We don't see ourselves reflected. We've had a bit of atrophy when it comes to our infrastructure, and we're really looking for someone to stand up for Bell's Corners and make sure it gets on the city's radar, because we are an important part of the city, and there's a lot of really special features about Bell's Corners. The fact that it's surrounded by the green belt, the fact that it has such a healthy small business main street in Robertson Road. A lot of people go there to shop from the north. Crystal Beach, for example, come down. It connects to Canada South. People from Qualicum come there. There's a big cycling community that uses the trails. So there's lots of things to love about Bell's Corners, but residents felt like they had been forgotten. And so when I was elected, I went to the city and I said, we need a secondary plan for Robertson Road. We need the city's attention for what growth is going to look like on Robertson Road, because a lot of these large parking lots could be considered, for future development. They have the space to create more housing right on the main street. But the city told me that, they really only do secondary plans, which is when they do this kind of like really comprehensive examination of high growth areas. They said, Robertson Road's not going to turn over that fast, so we're not going to be doing it in this first term. And I thought, wow, my residents aren't going to like that answer. And so we decided to commission our own report and to do our own consultation so that we could bring it to the city and say, hey, these are the elements that people want to know are being considered, and we can bring it to future developers as well to say, if you are considering doing additional housing in Bell's Corners, these are the things that are important to people. So that was sort of the genesis of the project. And then we put out so we did about a year of consultation. And we did it in places where people already were. So we did have an online survey, but we also did a walk shop where we had people come and walk up and down Robertson Road and be asked a series of questions. What are the connections like to your neighborhood? Can you walk here? What would it be like to be a senior on Robertson Road? What would it like to be kids growing up in Bell's Corners on Robertson Road? And through there started getting some themes. But I would also I went to the seniors' residences, for example, who weren't going to be doing a walk shop, nor were going to be doing a survey. I went to schools, and then I went to the library and I did a session there, trying to make more opportunities for people to participate. After a year, we were able to put together this report, and we did release it online. And from there, you're absolutely right. There were some, what would you call it, like flashpoints, within the report that made us all go, oh my gosh, fair enough. If you take this image out and you pop it there, I could see some alarm there. We realized that the idea that it was a consultation and that these themes actually came from the neighbors in Bell's Corners was getting lost. It was starting to sound like a city plan, when in fact the city still, has to commit to looking at Robertson Road. So we redrafted the report, but the changes that we made are fairly limited because, of course, you can't change the content when it's a consultation, right? So the themes are still the same, but the titles, for example, the way we do the headings in the report might reflect more that it was a consultation, like on the main page. It used to be called an action plan. Now it's called Reimagining Robertson Road, What You Told Us, right? So just trying to sort of remind folks that this is at the consultation phase, and that the City of Ottawa would obviously have to do much more due diligence when it came to doing, implementing any of those changes. So it was kind of when it started going wild online for the one lane stuff, that kind of broke my heart a little bit because it was a bit of a distraction from what the larger theme of road safety might have been. But, mea culpa, I can see how some of those images were alarming. So I think the second report will feel a little bit more approachable, for people where they're at. And, again, it was kind of like a de facto consultation online about the report, right? So it just continued to improve it. And it will continue to evolve as the years go on. But I really could not let another day go by without making some noise about Bell's Corners, because it deserves it.
And you know what, Bell's Corners, I've shown the pictures online. We've all seen the picture from Robertson Road back in the 80s with consumers distributing a McDonald's, and everything is the same. The signs have changed. Consumers distributing's not there anymore. Burger King's not there anymore, but the signs are the same, right? So it's looked the same. There are very valid concerns. There's missing sidewalks in various areas, and I want to get to that after. I put out a few videos on this, started discussing it. Over 20,000 people saw them. Hundreds of people commented, sent me messages.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, it really got the conversation going. And I wanted to sort of present both ways, because what I found in my thing is there was a lot of people that were upset about the one lane thing, but there were also a lot of people that liked the plan, that said this is a good plan. There's a lot of good in this, more pedestrian space, more community space. You talk about community pride. So it was really mixed from what I saw. And then you went out and did this second plan. But I want to talk about, get this one lane thing out of the way.
Sure.
And just sort of put it all out there. So you put out a video on May 12th clarifying it. I think it was right before or right as you were putting out this second plan, saying there's no plan to reduce Robertson Road in one lane in either direction. I can see how there's a picture in the report, when taken out of context on social media, might make it look that way. But the report was talking about how there's enough room on Robertson Road to make it safe for different kinds of users and still have traffic flow. But I did find a few points in the old plan that did say more than just a picture. There were 2 lines very explicitly under connected regionally that calls for, quote, the reducing of number of vehicle lanes to support a more pedestrian-oriented street. May 2026 removes that line. And then in 2020, in March, it also says, what about traffic? By reducing the number of lanes, change to reevaluating the number of lanes.
Yeah.
And then there was those changes. So the language has changed, but the photos are still the same, right? A lot of the photos are still the same. So was it ever intended to bring it down to one lane, looking at the lines, the images, and then sort of the bird's eye map? Was that ever the intention? That's what people want to know. Or was it just an oversight by the report?
Well, I mean, so you're bringing up a point of tension even between me and some of the people in my office.
Mm-hmm.
So the one image that I thought ended up being a real stinker. So here, this was where the picture was that had the... Yes, exactly. So totally, that picture shows one lane of traffic in either direction.
Exactly.
But I think what we were trying to demonstrate was these sliders, right?
Yeah.
So the sliders on the bottom are trying to say these were the things that people cared about. What could happen if we moved around the sliders to try and emphasize the things that people were wanting to see while still preserving the traffic flow that was identified through the data analysis that the consultant did. So that picture, I like looking back, hindsight being 2020, it's like, yeah, you put that online. It looks like we've reduced it to one lane in either direction. Now, I won't apologize for the idea that we might want to reduce vehicle lanes. I mean, gosh, that road is 4 lanes of traffic in either direction. And one of the things that we've been talking about with our council colleagues in Canada South and Stittsville is like right now, LRT Stage 3 is proposed as a train and would be going up through from the Moody Station down into Stittsville and Canada South from the north.
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like if we were to extend the baseline BRT and move it from, Bayshore through the Qualicum area around Richmond and then through Bell's Corners and hit Canada South and Stittsville with a rapid bus? So that's something that those councillors are curious about, and certainly I'm curious about. That would effectively reduce the number of vehicle lanes, right, for a transit lane.
Yeah.
So that could still be a conversation because gosh knows we're all a little lukewarm on the idea of more trains right now. And so I think it's worth reevaluating it. And one of the commitments I got through putting this report through was, that the transportation planning groups were going to reassess transit service for Bell's Corners because it's abysmal. It's abysmal. They had their bus service cut in COVID and they have never reinstated the frequency of those buses. And then you had New Ways to Bus, which reduced the 200 series. So they need more transit. I think that there's enough room on Robertson Road to probably do something like that. So in those kinds of ways, I think that's what I'm trying to show with the sliders. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the places. Now, when you're talking about the other pictures that haven't changed,
yeah.
If you talk to David on my team, he'll say, Laine, they still look like one lane of traffic in either. It's these ones, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So these are conceptual sketches. Mm-hmm. And I had them look sketchy because, again, they're just looking like ideas. This is a linear park idea. The linear park is something that, again, we have this lane in the middle of Robertson Road where you can turn both left and right to go to business. Now, we have it there and we don't do it really anywhere else anymore because having unsignalized turns across multiple lanes of traffic is like a no-no for road safety. And we're starting to eliminate them where we see them. So what would it look like to use that center lane as maybe a linear park or some kind of walkable area? I don't know. But I do think these are all of the elements when, residents are looking for more walkability and more public realm that could be on the docket. Now, would you be able to do them all? And everybody just walks down Robertson Road to get where they're going? No, not at all. But these are the elements of the consultation that were part of the discussion and are being put forward. But no matter what, I should mention, and I'm sorry, this is where, maybe doing a podcast form, I ramble. But
That's okay.
One of the
people want to hear.
Okay, yeah. So what I really wanted to say was so this report, we got commitment in the 2026 budget for public realm and transportation planning attention from the city of Ottawa that we wouldn't have had without the report. So in terms of advancing people even looking at what's possible for Robertson Road, this report has done that. I can't presume what those city staff will come up with. And those moments will still be future conversations and consultations and like data-driven decisions. But, those pieces, the transportation piece and the public realm piece that are really important to residents of Robertson Road are now going to see some traction because we made some noise with this report. So it's never going to be reduced to one lane in either direction. Functionally, that would not be possible. However, there are elements of what a 4-lane highway in either direction could do that could be worthy of conversation. And that's what the report was trying to do. Yeah.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. I think this is something that needed to be said and sort of discussed because, the big things people are like, there's a hospital at the end of the road, right? What about ambulances one way, right? So there's all these concerns that people had. So understanding sort of the process around it and your clarification, like you say, the one line that did stay the same was narrowing the road and sacrificing some car capacity to shorten crossing distances to free up trees, wider sidewalks, protected bike lanes, and placemaking. So not necessarily removing the 2 lanes, maybe narrowing it, changing up the way it looks. That's in both reports, right? Yeah. So I guess sort of that's what you're saying, right? Sort of changing the way things are going, not necessarily reducing it, but changing the layout that it's less like a highway and more like a main street. Because we're going to talk about the main street aspect of it because that's what Robertson Road is looking like, especially in future city planning.
Yeah.
It's being designated as a main street. Functionally, it already is because of all the businesses there. There is redevelopment happening. Zellers finally has a tenant. It's going to be a pickleball court, and we'll see what happens with that whole plaza. I'm not entirely sure.
There are hooked into this report.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Are they, I guess Choice Properties owns the plaza.
Yes.
So they're on board with sort of, you were talking about community space. Right?
Yes.
So I guess we'll jump into that.
Sure.
Community space, specifically in that sort of corner where Zellers was. It's a big waste of space. There's a few trees there. What will that look like? You talk about it being a way to instill community pride, to have a public square. There's a lot of events, but when events happen, it ends up happening in a parking lot anyways, right? Think of the Fun Fair and the Fresco parking lot, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So what does that look like? What does it look like for the tenants, and what does it look like for the community if you were to transform that space?
Mm-hmm. So I've been, developing that relationship with Choice Properties since I was elected. And they have let me know, one of the first questions was, what are you doing there, right? Like, because people, talk about a lightning rod for what's happening with Bell's Corners. It's that property, right? It's right at Moody and Robertson. It's like the most, iconic space that you could imagine. I said, are you planning on redeveloping that, right? Like let me know what your plans are. And they said, no, they have the Loblaws there that is a healthy business and has a lease. And so they are working to populate the Zellers building, and they've been putting money into it, as you say. But I did want to let them know, okay, well, that's great. They have a vice president of placemaking. And I said, okay, so let's continue this conversation. Now, they are going to obviously have their own priorities when it comes to redeveloping that space. But I attached them to the executive director of the BIA. And I said, listen, let's start this conversation because Moody and Robertson is, theoretically a natural gathering place. We're going to have the LRT, Moody, on the north side of the highway, where maybe there's like a mobility hub or like someplace where people can get together to catch a frequent bus or things like that, right? And so I've let them know, and I've shared this report with them, and we've met a few times as they're working through future tenancies or whether they're going to build up a little bit on that parking lot. Would we be able to work together to have some kind of privately owned public space, which is a concept that downtown uses when there's not a lot of public land available. It's a bit more tricky because you're working with a lot of, different stakeholders, but not impossible. So since then, I know that the public realm, I don't remember his perfect name, but the guy who runs public realm at the City of Ottawa has gone to this intersection to look at, there's also 4 kind of old lampposts that are on the corners there that are, maybe not doing as much as they could. So there is electricity that goes there. Could we have electricity and water hookup so that we could do some of those gathering spaces? Right now, the BIA has been working really hard to create more opportunities like that in Bell's Corners. The Beer Fest is one. The Summer Bash is one. They have a fabulous tree lighting down at the other end of Robertson. But maybe there's something else. Maybe there's a market. Maybe there, the things that people like to do. And so, can we work with that particular landowner to make that happen? I'm just trying to shepherd along what could be possible. And residents really did see that. When we were doing the walk shop, we stopped there because there is kind of that grassy area, right? And so residents could already they're like, yeah, this could make sense here. This could expand. We could try and do something a bit more purpose-built here.
There's already some nice trees.
Yeah. And the right-of-way at the City of Ottawa is not small, so there could be a shareable moment there. But again, it's a long-term vision, but certainly, having a good partner and having a good relationship with Choice Properties has been really exciting for me. And, I'm looking forward to being able to knock doors, next year this year and be able to and be able to talk about, the progress that we've made with some of these concerns that people brought to me at the doors in 2022. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's a great sort of vision. I like that vision, turning these spaces into something that can be better used.
Yeah.
Turning those empty, unused parts of the parking lots into parts. And this mobility hub is interesting because you mentioned the mobility hub a few times throughout the report, especially since Moody LRT is about 2.5 kilometers up the road.
Sure is.
It's, one of the very few suburbs so far that will actually be connected to the LRT, right? So it's a great opportunity. So what is this looking like? This mobility hub you're talking about, what does that mean?
What does the mobility hub idea mean? I'm not sure yet. I think it means that we will want people to gather and get to Moody and Robertson. If we want rapid transit, is it going to be winding all the way through Bell's Corners? Probably not, right? It's going to be some kind of straight shot. And I don't want to presume the whole plan, but, some kind of straight shot for some, frequency that would be meaningful to people. But we're going to have to get people there, which probably means we're going to need, bike racks, maybe seating, maybe coffee, like that kind of thing. I think that could be, all kind of tied into what that public space might look like. And presenting it to Choice, it's sort of saying like, that would be good for you too, right? Because all of a sudden you've got this great traffic around your businesses and a landing place where people will sort of, the thing that is really tricky for Robertson Road that you'll hear about with other main streets is you don't have accidental economies there, You have people that love what they see, like love the businesses they love, and they'll drive. And they'll do their shopping like that. But there's no window shopping necessarily. There's no browsing. There's no like, oh, I'll just, pop in and get XYZ for next week's birthday, whatever. So that could be a very cool opportunity. And as you said earlier, the official plan does ask for businesses and homes to start building closer to the road. We have lots of really healthy plazas that I don't anticipate are all going to go at the same time. But do we have an opportunity here with that LRT connection to sort of, demonstrate what could be possible and what activation could happen, so that when other people follow suit or maybe they choose to follow suit, they have an example of what's been working.
And you know what? We've talked about cars. Mm-hmm. Talked about transit. Mm-hmm. I want to focus on the other two parts, pedestrians and cycling, which especially cycling, as you know, is a very controversial topic in this city, in this province, in this country, given that we are a winter city and a lot of people don't like the idea of building bike lanes that are not serviced in the winter. And you do make a point of saying, of talking about, enhanced winter maintenance that will ensure the sidewalks and bike lanes remain usable and safe year round. So, that's a big thing that is not just Bell's Corners, that's across the city. That's something that is obviously could be fixed because there's a lot of bike lanes that plows don't fit, right? So, but I want to talk about the bikes and the pedestrians. So first, pedestrians. You did the walk shops. As many people know, there are just portions where the sidewalk just stops and there's nothing. Is that something that, because it'll come in phases, sort of on the priority list, that's number one or number two, right? What is that looking like? How does this fit in? And what is this going to look like to make Robertson better for pedestrians, especially as a main street?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's actually two parts to that. So it's not only the sidewalk connectivity, but it's also getting across Robertson Road. So we have been able to see that a sidewalk project on the west side of Robertson is advancing this year. So it's on the north side, which is a rehabilitation of an existing sidewalk. But because of this project and because of the nudges that it's been given, they are going to be looking also at the south side, which is where people actually live, right? If you go on the south side of Robertson Road between, it wouldn't be as far as Moody, let's say the Freshco, all the way to Westcliff, that is a sidewalk that is actually shared across several private right-of-ways to get into those buildings. And so the city of Ottawa knows that it's not really that helpful for pedestrians. It's like really uneven. The drainage is kind of funky. Like it's a bit more complicated. But because we've been able to sort of advance the conversation, they are looking at it and they will rehab them. They're going to try and bundle them so that they can do both sides at the same time, which I know is extremely important for Westcliff. As you start moving further east, you do have a bit more of some more formal intersections. But when I was talking to residents at Stillwater Creek, for example, which is a retirement residence that's kind of right at Vanier and
that's the Dairy Queen.
Yeah, exactly. I had residents in there tell me that they take a cab. They take a cab to go across the street for their medical appointment because they actually can never get across the street with the timing of that intersection. So it's the signal timings changing for pedestrians, which will, obviously slow traffic a bit. It's also like ladder markings. So the city's ladder markings, which is like the zebra crossing for intersections, their policies around when they paint those and when they don't paint those are frankly like a little obtuse. I said, can we just have ladder markings at these intersections to indicate to everybody that pedestrians use these too? And they're like, well, there's warrants and there's this and there's that. So again, trying to use this report to say, listen, like I appreciate that there's rules around this, but in the absence of them, it will never feel like a road for more than one kind of user. So those are the different pieces of pedestrian life that we're hoping for. I mean, if you go down to like in front of the Susie Q's, which is, I guess, at Old Richmond and Robertson thereabouts, there's like a pole right in the middle of the sidewalk. So even that, you're like, we got to talk to Hydro. We got to talk to, traffic signals again. Like there's a lot of players to get pedestrian safety realized. For the cycling, I'm not sure. I mean, in the city's plans, I think that the vibe has been to not actually put cycling on Robertson Road, but to go behind Fitzgerald and go up and to Trim and then extend a bike path up that way. That might still be what happens. My concern for that is obviously that we do have residents on either side that would like to use their bikes. One of the stories I heard was a young person that lives in Bellwood Estates, which is Vanier, so the mobile home park. So kids living in there, they want to take their bikes to go to school at Our Lady of Victory, which is on Old Richmond. So they want to cycle and they don't feel safe. So then they go on the sidewalk. And then we have a pedestrian cycling conflict, right? And that's where we start pitting vulnerable road users against each other to feel safe. So again, I don't know what the solution would look like. But when I was talking to different folks in the neighborhood, I heard many stories about how people would like to be able to move around. So yeah, it's still like part of what the future sort of analysis would need to be. But I think they're all worthy of interrogation.
And you know what? This creating of a road for all four users, cars, walkers, pedestrians, and transit. That is, I think, and if you look at that sliding scale, sort of the crux of this plan, making it that all four types of mobility are all equally serviced along this road. Now, I do have a question. In the old version for Vision for the Street, there was a mention of an active year-round gathering place where walking, biking, and transit are the preferred ways to access local businesses in the area. The new version is not in there. That line. Is there a reason why that line was removed? Or was it just revised for a certain reason? Because that was a very strong sort of point in the old version. Right.
It sounds like pretty good.
But that was removed from the new one.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just wondering, because I know people will point that out, because that's pretty much the crux of this plan. It was removed.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that was an oversight by somebody at Mobicon or if that was just an intentional thing. But more or less, this is still the vision, where walking, biking, and transit are the preferred ways to access local businesses in the new plan.
Yeah, maybe now that you're sort of saying it again and saying it slower, the idea is that if we suggest what the preferred way is in this plan, then it sounds maybe more prescriptive than we would be prepared to be at this stage. And those might be the types of alarm bells that are going off for people. So as you say it a couple times, it's like, okay, it sounds pretty good, but it does sound maybe a bit presumptuous, right? Because we're not actually in a place where we're going to start making decisions. So by removing it and just having a question mark, but saying this is what people told us, that's, I think, where we're trying to land with this report. However, I do know that, when it comes to some of the tensions that we see between what is obviously a commuter road and the types of livability and local economy values that people have talked about, that getting around the road using other ways safely is kind of part of it. So yeah, I imagine that's what it is. I mean, if you look at the last picture, right? Like you look at that last sort of blowout. So like that one we actually didn't change because, again, it's elements of the conversation, but we did label them and we did, put a little caveat saying, again, like this is not getting built. These are the pieces that people are interested in. So again, just trying to recommunicate, actually,
Exactly.
We're not, I don't know that much has changed, but I think, maybe taking out the parts that made it sound like it was a done deal, because that was obviously causing alarm and unhelpful and not at all where we're at. And then trying to sort of beef out the parts of how people spoke about what was important to them.
Yeah. And looking at this picture, it's sort of the wide view of everything, and whether it's one lane or two lanes or whatever. I mean, I know you're saying you're not going to do one lane, but even if it, whatever it is, this is what it will look like regardless, because you have your multiple lanes of traffic. But again, there's there's busways, there's bike lanes, there's zebra intersections you're talking about. There's that view of the public space, right? So there's sort of the overall vision is communicated quite well in that last photo, I'd say, regardless of what will happen. That intersection needs to be fixed, regardless of that. Now, I do want
a football field.
Exactly.
It's honestly a football field. I brought the mayor there when he was doing ward tours back in maybe 2023, 24. And I stood him at Moody and Robertson and I said, can you see the LRT station from here? Like, I can't. And we need to know that we can come to this intersection to get there. It's like, we've put so much money into this train. And so, we're going to have to make it friendly. Yeah. Right now, it feels a bit hostile, right? And so those are all the elements. And of course, we know that cost and other pieces will be of consideration. But, it was important for me to kind of blow up the conversation, get people's, hopes and aspirations on the table. And then we can do the bureaucratic hashing out part after. But, it was... when people want to say, what are you doing with Robertson Road? I want to be able to say, well, I came and talked to you for a year and we think we've got some great ideas,
So as we're starting to wrap up, I just want to talk about sort of the plan itself in the end and sort of the way it happened. You already talked on, you did consultations. I did the calculations, about 437 people engaged in various ways, assuming that...
Plus 20,000.
Plus 20,000 now on my channels, and then all the people at the Bell's Quarters Facebook, right? Yeah. Sort of in the initial consultations, that was about 4% of the population. And then as the first draft went out, that's when it picked up steam.
Yeah.
Was that, in your mind, did you expect that to happen? Did you expect there to be sort of a wider discussion once the plan went out? Because it sounds like your intention was to really get the conversation going. And by pushing out the first plan, that's when you intended. You know, you engaged a good number of people, but again, 4%. But then, you know, more people engaged with my videos than live in Bell's Corners, right? So was that sort of the hope and dream that once you put out the report, that's when people would really get up and really start looking at it?
Honestly, the report was to yell at the city to pay attention, you know? So
The report was to say to the city,
not another day can go by without us remembering Bell's Corners, because I have sat on, you know, several committees for several years, and Bell's Corners continues to be absent from the conversation. So again, you know, what this report serves to do is to put it in the hands of transportation planning, they call themselves traffic services, but road safety, public realm, and say, here you go. These are your puzzle pieces, you know, and from there we want to see additional lines of inquiry, and then those lines of inquiry. I mean, I'm glad that it was you know, so provocative in the sense that once we have these different pieces, I think we'll probably, I hope you'll talk about it again, and we'll have a really good turnout for some of those pieces, you know. I think that it's turned out actually very well. I wish I hadn't made people feel worried or frightened or anxious, you know, like that's a shame. And I think I've I've reflected on that, and I hope that the way that the report is framed now can sort of ease some of those anxieties. But yes, I mean, without a doubt, this is a long-term conversation. The sidewalk project advancing this quickly is fabulous. You know, getting the South Side into that conversation earlier is fabulous. So there are pieces that are already happening, but some of those larger fights, like if you think about the public realm work that we're seeing, right? Not to be downtown versus suburban, but you know, we've seen some pretty cute little placemaking projects pop up as temporary installations in Centertown over the last year, right? I don't see why we couldn't do something like that at Moody and Robertson, you know, and test it and pilot it, you know, maybe in tandem with the LRT coming online. I think that could be really exciting. So those are the things I'm hoping for moving forward. But again, you know, nothing about us without us, and residents, I hope, will continue to participate with me.
Amazing. And sort of from a, you know, I want to be transparency sort of point of view, because a lot of people will notice that the old report is gone. The original report is gone.
Oh, okay.
So is that because I had a really hard time finding the original copy because it's been scrubbed from everywhere? So is there going to be an opportunity to have the old one clearly marked saying, this is the old one, this is not available?
Gosh, I love that feedback, actually.
Because it's the original plan is gone. Like the Nation Builder link is broken. The Google Drive link is gone. So, you know, is that something that you would be able to sort of, especially since it's a third party that did it, taxpayer dollars went towards it, people are going to be asking where this original report is.
I love that.
So I just wanted to bring that up to you, if that can be brought back, just because people will want to reference it and see that you did make the changes of removing that language.
My gosh, yes. Okay, so what's funny is, you know, we as I said, like we just put the revised version online, but we haven't actually done any of our own socials around, you know, why we've done the changes or anything like that. And we were talking, I don't know if this is valuable for the podcast, but anyway, we were talking about meeting you here, and it's like, okay, so now we should talk about it, right? Like what are we getting? Like we've been a little busy over the last, first it was the 417 construction. So that was 3 weeks of work, and now it's obviously the devastating flood. So this kind of, you know,
back burner
a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're right. Like we should totally do a social or like a thing being like, this is what we started with. This is where we're going. Connect the two. I love it.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. I wanted to bring that up to you just because I know it will be something questioned, right? You know,
I think that's great.
So,
no, and then just executing. I really appreciate the feedback.
There you go. Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up. So sort of as we wrap up, I want to come back to the
Can we find it though? Now,
can we find it?
it's somewhere. It's somewhere. Yes.
Somewhere. Well, I dug for a couple hours and I finally found a copy. So
Oh crap.
So-
Okay.
so,
well,
yeah.
no, I think we should do better than that. That's a great suggestion.
sort of coming back to my first question that I asked, why Robertson, right? I had asked at the beginning, why are we focusing on Robertson? You know, people will say, Maryville Road is probably even worse. Why not that? Baseline BRT. But you mentioned it's in tandem with this, you know, around Ottawa, if we're talking about commuter traffic, a ring road, right? There's a lot of other options that seem a lot more, and if people will say, seem a lot more crucial, especially Maryville Road is one of the worst roads in the city. Why Robertson? Why not this sort of push with a plan for Maryville or for the baseline BRT or support for a ring road or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Why Robertson at this moment?
Well, I think it goes back in 2023 when I said we need a secondary plan for Robertson Road. The city of Ottawa said no, but I did get a secondary plan for Maryville Road, and I did get a secondary plan for Baseline and around Algonquin College. So the city is doing those, and we're engaging with residents on those right now. But there was nothing for Bell's Corners. And for me, like the topography of the street, you're right. Like Maryville is very similar. You got these big parking lots.
I call it the most American road we have.
So yeah, like, and you know, I mean, they don't have 4 lanes of traffic in either direction, but they have a ton of congestion and they have a lot of problems. And the city has said, we have that in hand. And so I'm continuing to push and say, and also Bell's Corners, because they deserve the same foresight, the same future, the same opportunity to participate in city programs, but they're not getting it, you know, and the investment doesn't follow. So in this way, this is sort of, you know, as well as those other plans to make sure that Bell's Corners doesn't get left behind.
There you go. Well, thank you.
And also, by the way, don't doubt that doing Robertson Road here has made residents in those neighborhoods saying, where's our walk shop and where's our this and that, right? So, you know, I am trying to share the love and spread the attention out as much as I can.
There you go. I just wanted to bring that up because I know I'm going to have some Maryville people say, how about us? And Baseline, how about us, right? And it's all sort of, these are all roads that have been sort of, were built for the 60s, built for the 80s, but we are now 50, 60 years later, right? Yeah. So it's just really putting that focus. So I guess that's all for today. Thank you, Laine, for having me in your office. I'm really glad we had this conversation. I really hope it gets the conversation cleared up. I really hope it helps get a good comms campaign going to really push, okay, what's this all about?
Mm-hmm.
And really get this conversation going, because I have no doubt that for Bell's Corners residents, this will be their ballot question, right? I have no doubt that for Bell's Corners, especially with the noise that has come out about it, that this will be their number one concern this fall when they go to the ballot box, right? So I'm glad we're able to do this. Always on the VCalla Show, my last word always goes to the guest. Anything else that you feel like you want to mention, anything that you didn't mention that you want to just sort of say at the very end?
I guess it's that, you know, when in doubt, reach out. You know, I have been, I believe, you know, I've tried to show up for residents in a way to rebuild trust with City Hall for College Ward. You know, that relationship deserved a lot of attention. And I hope this podcast can serve that. Like, I have a tremendous appetite for feedback. I'm very curious how to improve, but I do represent residents. And so, you know, when you see things online or when you have a curiosity, like, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask me directly. I've got, you know, staff that have been with me since 2022. I'm very grateful for that. But again, you know, this was based out of resident feedback. Those voices also matter. And so we're going to try and get to a place where, you know, everybody can see a piece of themselves in what gets put forward, you know, and I will always fight for residents of College Ward to make sure they're on the map with the city of Ottawa.
Well, you know what? This is exactly what I did. I posted a video. I said, here's what's going on. People were asking me. I said, you know what? I did an open invitation. I said, I'm going to call Laine Johnson's office and get her on the show.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss it. And here we are. So thank you for this. I'm sure many people of Nepean and the city of Ottawa will be very appreciative of this conversation. We're going to try and get it everywhere. I'm sure we'll work together to really blast it out and make sure everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And really get the conversation going to talk about what is the future going to look like.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on. Thank you for tuning in. The VCalla Show is a VCalla production in association with CrossCut Digital Strategies. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you like this one, you can find more by subscribing to VCalla Productions on YouTube, following at VCalla Canada across all my social media platforms, and by visiting vincenzocalla.com, where you can also join my mailing list. So that's all for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.